Welcome back. With my last upload, we discussed my thoughts right after I finished FF7 Rebirth. This time we will be doing a better deep dive into the mystery of Era's status by the end of the game. If you watched the last video, stick around. I'm jumping into this topic more than a year later, so I wouldn't be spending too much time on this if I didn't genuinely believe that I was adding something new to the discussion and revealing new things to you guys. A little background on myself. I'm an avid Kingdom Hearts theory YouTuber. So I'm a tourist to this whole Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth junction. In fact, I have one more video based on Rebirth in the chamber to my knowledge before I'll be done discussing FF7 Re-Trilogy till the announcement, release, and conclusion of Final Fantasy 7 Reunion. There's no way they aren't going to name it that, bro. I want to do more this time to build my case for the one argument of Aerith being alive by the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I know a lot of material has been released that may, or that you would assume, confirms that Aerith is dead. And maybe, just maybe, like Cloud, I may be in denial about her being dead. But like I said, and I'm going to stand on it, I wouldn't be making these videos if my belief in this wasn't genuine. As of me writing this script, the original video I made is sitting at 94 views. So these videos is going to hurt my viewership and visibility long term, and yet when I watch the discussion unfold in other videos and on social media, the consensus is against me in it that most of the FF7 community is decided on the topic. The verdict? Aerith is killed by Jenova Sephiroth, and there's a boulder of evidence bearing down on me as I stand before everyone with my exact thoughts without the ability to make videos to say still, despite interviews and ultimatums and promises from the developers that Aerith is alive at the end of Final Fantasy Rebirth. Before we get started, I want to lay out some groundwork. In this video, I'm going to label the other side of the discussion as the consensus, as I'll be challenging everything I've heard and read on the topic during my research to further my understanding of Aerith's condition by the end of the game. This is not an analysis of scenes, but rather a display of what I believe to be an exercise of doublethink from the developers. The remake trilogy is just that, a remake trilogy. So while I'm not making any indignations of anyone, this I think leads people to graft the familiar onto the unknown. Here's a question to keep in mind before we get going that I want you to consider. Is Aerith dead to you because she dies in the original game? Like, I'm not asking to paint you as a purist. The question is straightforward. Do you believe Aerith is dead because in the original game Aerith dies, and thus it must have happened here too, to bring about further developments and deepen this reimagining, retelling of FF7? But I'm 4 paragraphs in on the script, and I think it's time we get started.
Sephiroth.
Huh? This is the key, which grants access to the true counterpart hidden between worlds.
Give it back!
Whoa!
So what is the meaning and function of the aforementioned term doublethink? Through doublethink, the public also runs under the impression that the party's contradictory slogans, war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength, are logical statements. With that in mind, I wanted to discuss people's reactions to the ending of Rebirth, which was met with a lot of ire for not being bold enough to have the balls to give us a definitive answer on Aerith's fate. A consensus that the developers wanted to straddle the line of making everyone happy, and this is why no one can say with a certainty, even the developers themselves as of right now, that Aerith is dead, because it's an answer to be revealed in part 3 when Cloud has his mental break. Will Aerith be one of the things to send him into a stupor about his inability to save anyone? Well, I lied to you already. You probably sighed with relief when I said that I wasn't going to be doing an analysis of the scenes from the game. But that would be contradictory to the whole idea of wanting to build my case and challenge Aerith's death side, or the consensus of the discussion and discourse surrounding this game. While I asked you to stick with me, that sigh of relief was an example of doublethink in action to portray to you exactly what I think the developers are doing with Aerith here. Let's take it from the top. So the most widely accepted part of this discussion, as it's grown over the years since Rebirth's release back in 2024, is that all of the Re-trilogy is a meta-commentary on Cloud's mental state. That everything we've seen is based on a unreliable narrated perspective waiting to all come crashing down and crumble and burn, with one of its greatest pieces of evidence being the scene in the T2 Aerith timeline where she tells Cloud, "This isn't about me though, it's..."
Take it.
But your mom gave that to you.
This isn't about me, though. It's about saving the world. And you.
It's about you. It's about saving the world and you. Which is a good jumping off point for this discussion, as later in the same scene, Aerith says, "No matter what, don't blame yourself," which implies that this Aerith knows, or earlier in the scene she would say this, which implies this Aerith knows what is to come and how Cloud will respond to it. This Aerith still seems to know the future, unlike the Aerith within the Rebirth timeline. Remember, I'm going to be labeling the two Aeriths we see in the different timelines, T1 and T2, with the Aerith in Rebirth itself, like the full game. I'm going to just call her Aerith. Whereas our Aerith and Red 13 even have both confirmed that they have forgotten their future memories that they had before going into the Singularity to fight Sephiroth. But here's my counterpoint that I think keeps me disillusioned with the idea that Aerith's death and the reality of the situation here is honestly not due to Cloud's mental state. Though the story begins with Cloud's false retelling of the events in Nibelheim, the assertion of this retelling of Zack's time working with Sephiroth being a window into deeper layers of Rebirth just seems like wishful thinking. I think it's a means by which some fans are trying to do their own suppression of the fact that this story will end with major differences from the original, though we are heading into the same ending with Aerith in the live stream with Zack as we saw them in Advent Children. Keeping Aerith's death at the altar would invalidate doing anything other than simply remaking the original game and then in episodic episodes or episodic DLC chapters establish the plot lines for Advent Children alongside the original game story, or better yet, introducing another mobile game that features these multiple layers, as Advent Children is confirmed to still fall right in the timeline where it's always been, 2 years after the beheading of Jenova, the defeat of Sephiroth in the live stream, and Aerith beckoning the planet to save all life on Gaia by strengthening Meteor. In the Temple of the Ancients, we were already given the setup for Advent Children to fall in place in the timeline. The Cetra speaking to the party says that the defeat of the calamity from the sky causes a blight, and this is how the Cetra slowly but surely died out. Aerith's lineage must have been immune to it, thus her and Ifana became the last living Cetra. So if we know Advent Children is going to happen anyways, why change anything? Why add Aerith and Cloud's mental breakdown? I don't see this being the case, and in order to explain why not, I need to reiterate something you may or may not know. Crisis Core is called Crisis Core because it's indicative of the origin of Cloud's mental crisis in the original game based on what Zack does to Cloud at the end. When Cloud crawls over to Zack and Zack tells him about becoming his living legacy and how his honor and dreams will subsist into Cloud as he hands him the Buster Sword. Cloud internalizes these words, creating the persona we know leading up to the original Cloud's mental collapse. It is not a denial of Zack's existence, but rather Cloud becomes Zack through those words. They infect his mind, and thus Zack is erased from Cloud's memory as he assumes the position of Zack within said memories. This is why, from my perspective at least, it would be an on-the-nose over-exaggeration and conflation of Cloud's mental instability to arbitrarily make Aerith into yet another part of Cloud's mental collapse in Part 3, as this would also undermine the lengths Aerith goes to rectify and try to help Cloud while we know she's alive. And this would also erase the setup from Remake and even in Rebirth, with future Sephiroth practically begging Cloud to join him so that they may defy destiny to achieve his goals.
My honor. My dreams. They're yours now.
I'm your living legacy.
Cloud, lend me your strength. Let us defy destiny together. Cries, her rapture.
Screaming! It's screaming!
Now, Cloud. I thought you might finally understand. Cloud, lend me your strength. Let us defy destiny together. 7 seconds till the end. Time enough for you, perhaps. But what will you do with it? Let's see. Let go of the past, Cloud. For the future is bright. We are to bear witness to the reunion of worlds.
A reunion.
As Aerith leaves him with the clear materia which reflects his image back onto him at the end. When he thinks of her and looks at it, that materia will always remind him to find himself in its reflection. Both of these plot points have tangible evidence. It is Cloud who sets future Sephiroth free in the Singularity in Remake, proving that Sephiroth's desire to beckon Cloud to his side has some real ramifications to it. Aerith in the T2 timeline giving Cloud the clear materia is in response to how Cloud became a puppet at the Temple of the Ancients, signifying that she wants him to be himself, not for any nefarious reasons, but perhaps because of who Cloud is. Cloud observably has the power to break the shackles of destiny. It's the reason why Sephiroth can have the power he has now and yet still fail to defeat a Cloud who is mentally damaged, which is how Jenova and Sephiroth has this grasp on his mind to begin with. Making Aerith's death a part of that, in my mind, would be simply bad writing. It simply would just be bad writing to me. It's just adding that layer on there for the sake of doing it. It serves no real purpose. Sephiroth has been wanting Cloud to join him since Remake back in 2020. What does an extra layer of denial about someone Cloud knew was destined to die when he saw the memories from the Arbiter of Fate, and the party has a scene in Rebirth where they recall the vision it gave them of Meteor. Also, memory suppression is just that, memory suppression. It would/shouldn't allow Cloud to negate things that are right in front of him. There's the scene in the reactor that may be conflated into proof of Cloud having such a condition, but this would still be false. Cloud does not simply ignore Tifa's scar. Sephiroth and Jenova take a hold of his mind. It isn't just Cloud desperately wants to ignore the scar on Tifa's chest so he can get a free lick in on her. That's not what's happening, bro. Personally, I can't side with this take. The developers seem to perfectly be crafting a subtext of possibilities, but with the story elements of what we can see, not hear, indicates that there's has to be more going on with Aerith at the end of Rebirth. And I'm not saying this because I merely want to be right or I want Aerith to be alive. There just isn't a real basis to me for this idea to stand up to scrutiny. Mind you, I accepted this premise before I played the game myself.
This is the key, which grants access to the true counterpart hidden between worlds.
Give it back!
Whoa!
Now, there's also a theory of this Aerith being Jenova, and while I think this theory has more credence than the consensus of Aerith simply being dead and being a new layer of Cloud's mental anguish, I don't think that this one is on the money either. Why? Because if this was Jenova, I think that she'd remain with Cloud for the rest of the adventure, not be left behind at the Forgotten Capital. While I do see the merit here and it'd be a valid spin to have Cloud thinking a version of Aerith, of his exact Aerith rather, is stuck in a different timeline, one that will eventually cease to exist because it's a divergent timeline, it could play into the 7 seconds till the end line espoused by Sephiroth in Remake. But here's my legitimate issue with this theory. The main villain Sephiroth is not in cahoots with Jenova this time around. Jenova is like a footnote in this version of the story. In the original, again, every time you see Sephiroth until the end of the game, that is Jenova presenting him to the party. Save for Sephiroth is the first time you fight and interact with the legitimate Sephiroth, and Avalanche eventually fight her giant amalgamation form. The robed men in Nibelheim is also shown to us to be walking to the crater in Nibelheim to rejoin with her head like the original, and the Cetra who somehow know the future warn anyone striving for the black materia about her reunion and the blight that follows with her defeat. In fact, the Sephiroth in the temple and at the altar are both Jenova, while the Sephiroth who retrieves the black materia and fights Cloud at the edge of creation again is the one from the future. He's future Sephiroth. This is yet another form of doublethink that the developers are playing with us, cause you must pay extreme attention to know which Sephiroth is which. But in Remake, Sephiroth broke free from her will and backstabbed her. The two aren't in cahoots this time around.
A confluence of worlds and emotions. Loss chief among them. It engulfs fleeting moments of joy, transforming them into rage, sadness, hatred. However, you'll never see the truth with such clouded eyes.
Shut up!
After all, you're just a puppet.
Thus, with my compilation of thoughts and evidence on the other two arguments for what in the world is happening with Aerith by the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we circle back around to one simple conclusion that makes the most sense to me. Based on all of the setup given to us by Remake, based on all of the setup given to us by Rebirth, even leading up to this very moment, and that respects the time and intelligence of the player, Aerith simply is saved by Cloud when he parries Sephiroth's Masamune. I don't think this is done to keep Aerith alive by the time curtain call or the curtains drop. Aerith must go to the life stream in order to prevent Meteor from killing all life on Gaia and wounding the planet, allowing Sephiroth to become all-powerful. Which is why in the last video I tried to make the time travel shenanigans as clear as possible. We see how a mere choice of left or right creates a divergent timeline. We also see that some points in time are so fixed that they can lose their context and almost like a blight reappear in new forms to ensure that an individual's destiny plays out regardless of how it must occur. Zack and Biggs seem to be stuck within these limits. And this brings us back around to what future Sephiroth wants with Cloud. In Remake and Rebirth, Sephiroth wants to make amends and have Cloud join him in his crusade to change his own immutable fate in Destiny. To die at the hands of Cloud within the life stream for all his power, Cloud still can defeat him, and I mentioned this before. But if there's one thing I wish I did with the last video, it's show you that my assertion of what's going on with Aerith to be true, so I'm going to lay them out like as if we are all 5 years old. Through Zack, the developers and writers give us insight into the creation of these new timelines, or these divergent timelines, ones that will soon cease to exist and go back to the planet. Marked by the many different versions of Stamp the Dog. This motif should be questioned heavily because although it's good to give us, the viewers, a means to distinguish what happens in the core timeline versus these divergent timelines, they practically are priming us for something with this version of Zack that takes the knowledge of his situation and determines what he should do. And who needs him the most? Cloud and Aerith, or Biggs, whose head he's filled up with delusions of being someone/somebody important. Again, to believe this is shown to us for the ending to be all in Cloud's head would be dumb. It'd be stupid. Cloud is so fucked, his head is... I don't know why I said it like that. Cloud is so fucked, his head is creating an infinity of timelines to redeem himself from witnessing the death of two individuals in the same trilogy where he felt nothing when he bombed a reactor and thought he possibly killed dozens. In the same games where he's killed hundreds of Shinra troops. You aren't incapacitating people with a sword that size, moving it at that speed with super strength. There's just no way. But these two lives have him so strung up, he's overthinking them enough. The live stream itself is bending over backwards to craft these realities. The only way this works is if in part 3 it's revealed Remake and Rebirth take place in Cloud's Mako poison stupor, and again, that would be dumb. And that would just be completely dumb. But however, it's the only way you can it's the only way you can make sense of why time itself is breaking and collapsing and creating these divergences to make up for choices and decisions characters make, all the way down to the simplicity of making a right or making a left and who we're going to help first on our path forward. I can't see it. Cloud is given a white materia, a juxtaposition of what Aerith's materia is shown to be in our timeline closer to the beginning of the game. You'll receive this information around hour 30 in Costa del Sol, if I remember correctly, but somehow, some way, that white materia is within Cloud's memory. And what some people have done somehow, some way, it's bypassed the fact that T2 Aerith takes it and hands Cloud her clear materia. This is physically happening, and Cloud traverses the white void at the edge of creation to go through a timeline sphere to reach her timeline, which we know to be different from T1 Aerith's, because Zack returns to this timeline and we see a singular flower which aligns with the singular spec of the life stream that joins with him, being used to refill his HP and MP and assist him by blocking some of Sephiroth Reborn's projectiles. That green force field is a weakened ward, symbolizing that T1 Aerith is hanging on, resisting till the very end. This also aligns with Cloud telling T2 Aerith that Sephiroth is close by, as she confirms that she can sense him too, and tells him to focus on himself, that she can handle Sephiroth. Another detail simply omitted, just like how she'll mention the meteor at the end, is the thing about how the consensus views all of this stuff, is that it pretty much just ignores the information that we're given about how Aerith mentions to Cloud concepts he should not know. For instance, the meteor. The meteor is only known, like, the Cloud doesn't know that the black materia, in no suggestion does Cloud know that the black materia and Holy are supposed to be conflicting two different versions, like not two different versions, but two different powerhouses of materia that are conflicting, that they will come together. Remember, the party believes that if they do not do something with the information that the Arbiter of Fate leaves them with as they defeat it in Final Fantasy VII, that the meteor is supposed to be the end of the world. They do not know that Holy, like, there's no scene where anyone is shown or anyone is told by Aerith or anyone else that the white materia can generate Holy, and that, of course, Holy is supposed to be the counterpart to Meteor. They just believe that the meteor is going to crash and hit the earth. That's what they're shown as far as they know. So why does Aerith tell Cloud that she will stop the meteor? Why does Aerith give him the white materia? And even when he's given the white materia, he says that he thought it was a gift from her mother. He does not know, or nor does he know the importance of what the materia is supposed to do, which is why he doesn't say something more along the lines of, but don't you need this if we're going to stop the meteor? That's why he doesn't say anything like that. So clearly, what's going forward is, like, you know, the consensus, it ignores these facts. Like, if it's all a projection in his head, how does he know that Aerith is supposed to be the means they stop the meteor? How does he know about the meteor to have Aerith talking to him about the meteor, etc., so on and so forth? The timeline shenanigans surrounding Aerith has the looming threat of Sephiroth in both timelines, and it's clear that each timeline features an Aerith of its own. T2 Aerith is clearly the one that dies by Jenova Sephiroth's Masamune. Sephiroth within the white void says that you have my blessing to Cloud before he lands in the T2 Aerith's timeline. His blessing to do what? Help Aerith retrieve the materia? How would our Aerith retrieve the materia? That's a serious question when T2 Aerith's whispers force Cloud to stay out as she goes to the altar alone. We return to our timeline where the characters haven't even left the temple as Cloud returns to his body from what Barrett says appeared to be a near-death experience.
Must have been some dream you were having, judging by the way your eyes were twitching.
Don't know if I'd call it a dream.
Either way, something happened to you, didn't it?
Yeah. Got sent to another world. Apparently, there's at least a few more than one.
Is that right?
I'd explain, but don't think I can.
It's alright. Doubt I'd want to hear it anyway.
So how was Aerith in the forest yet at the temple, if this is all happening in the same timeline? A hallucination simply does not work here. Sorry, because we know for a fact we're shown that the date takes place in another timeline with the Stamp Champ's chips. Then Johnny will be carrying a Stamp's corgi. Then Sephiroth tells Cloud about the truth of reality before he will go to see T2 Aerith. And when we are told about the truthful realities and how the spheres in the white space coming together and crashing together is multiple timelines, multiple junction points that create different timelines, and we even go through these spheres to see that they are timelines and to see that there are different points in time, there's no way that Aerith, like that in that timeline, that's supposed to be our Aerith, because when Cloud wakes up, they haven't even left the damn temple yet. How did a hallucination and repression of what's real become the biggest accepted consensus on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's ending? Cause this doesn't make sense to me. And again, I believe this myself before I played the game. When Sephiroth comes flying down to stab Aerith, we see the rainbow effect that indicates a divergence in the timeline, as Aerith's death is clearly one of those aforementioned canon events that may try to rewrite itself and cause Aerith to be killed another way, by another means, or by the same means, just in a different context. But if this Aerith is dead, which Aerith reaches across space and time to save Zack, which Aerith reaches across space and time to save Zack from Meteor? To our knowledge, only one Aerith has something done about her canon event to be reaching across space and time to save anyone. It's our Aerith who will also open a white portal to reach the edge of creation to help Cloud. She does this during the confluence of worlds as stated by Jenova Sephiroth, and Sephiroth himself will state he underestimated her, specifically as his gaze is not on Cloud when he makes this statement. And it is Aerith whose expression switches from determined to puzzled upon him making this statement. So why does Cloud have a static vision about Aerith dying before she appears to him at the end? That's the one thing I cannot answer. All I can say is that Cloud has had static visions of a whole bunch of things. When certain events occur, especially if they occur during the original timeline, it's possible that another Aerith sent him the static visions to inform him during the confluence of worlds that the white materia has been planted where it needs to be for their plan to work, as in the Aerith's plan to work, as the original timeline, or the timeline that's not a divergence, the Rebirth timeline, would need the white materia to be within its world for, of course, the meteor to be stopped in that core timeline, as it is a core timeline. Which is why in the previous video I stated that T2 Aerith may be the Aerith from the original timeline, where she helps this version of Aerith get a white materia that her prayers can be fully realized on, to prevent the need of the light stream this time around, as the meteor doesn't even seem to be the objective of future Sephiroth himself. It seems his plans revolve around destiny. And with what we've seen going to the crater will not bring about the destruction of future Sephiroth himself, because his machinations have already afforded him dominion over time, it seems. And he wants to flip Cloud from Aerith's side too, because just like in the singularity, Cloud still has a power far greater than his deep down inside, which is why we're now 2-0 with future Sephiroth himself. So there's my thoughts on all the different versions of what people believe, all three consensuses, all three consensus of what people believe is going on with Aerith in Rebirth. And while it may seem like I made my belief out to be the strongest, it only seems that way because this makes sense to me for the story. I'm not presenting my belief as the strongest, as the only one that can be right, because I merely want to be right. The story itself, if part 3 is going to respect the time of us, the players, the story itself has built up the possibility and given us reason to believe that Aerith can be saved by Cloud, at least at the altar itself. Even the whole timeline shenanigans, it would be a waste of time to do all of this, everything in Remake, everything in Rebirth, even having future Sephiroth wanting Cloud to be flipped to his side because for some reason he has the power to push back against destiny and change destiny and change fate. This is why he drags him into the singularity. It seems like this is what's happening, to where everything we've been shown is pretty much exactly what it is, but there's deeper layers to why we see both realities. And I think that deeper layer has something to do with Aerith not wanting Avalanche to see the fact that she survives. And then it could also be to prevent Sephiroth from recognizing that she survives, as to prevent him from coming after her in the timeline, in a divergent timeline, which is a timeline that is destined to disappear in time and cease to exist as it goes back to the life stream, which is exactly where Aerith needs to be. So it's like, even though Cloud saved her, it's not like she's saved and she'll just exist in a different timeline with Zack for forevermore until she dies of old age, with Zack having 11 life and kids and shit with Zack. That's not gonna happen. What's gonna happen is at some point that timeline is gonna wither and fade away. And I think that this is what Sephiroth meant by 7 seconds to the end, because I don't see how there's some new layer to the story of 7 seconds to the end if it doesn't involve the most important things, the thing Cloud cherishes most, as Kate Siv's robot projected his future: seeking he shall find, but beware he shall lose the thing he cherishes most. Future Sephiroth, for all of his injunctions in the story, all of the times he appeared in the story, future Sephiroth is still out there somewhere, so they're still seeking him. I believe that the Sephiroth at the crater, even killing him, even destroying that version of him, doesn't get rid of future Sephiroth, because he broke free of the chains of destiny in Remake. So it's clear that this isn't the Sephiroth that's stuck within the northern crater. Plain and simple like that. Now, when it comes to the consensus of Aerith simply being dead and this all being some mental, some new portion of what they're going to add to Cloud's mental collapse, for me it just doesn't work. And I believed this before I played the game myself. It doesn't work because why is it that Cloud apparently know things? In order for his mind to be doing this, he would have to know things that he simply do not know. He would have to know things he simply do not know, and understand things that he simply do not understand, like the white materia, caused and holy, which can protect against Meteor. Aerith says at the end, I'm gonna put all my power into my prayers. I'll stop the Meteor.